This is the Last Minute Blues Podcast with Donny Fandango, Jeff Burton, Alex Ferrario, and former Blues defenseman Jamie Rivers.
It is the Last Minute Blues Podcast. Donny Fandango joined in studio this week by Jeremy Rutherford from The Athletic. And wow, Jeremy, I don't even know where to start. I don't even know the best way to get this thing going. I just think I probably speak for a lot of people, a lot of Blues fans, when I say I am still floored at the decision to fire Craig Berube and to move on from Craig Berube. I don't like it. And we've been in the podcast room before, and I, for those that don't listen regularly, I am a chief supporter through and through. I would run through a wall for that dude today, just like I would have done 2 weeks ago. Jeremy, the first question that I have for you, and I know hindsight being 20/20 as it is, but you are very close to this team. You see a lot that's going on. Did you have any idea that this was even being talked about behind the scenes?
No, not being talked about in terms of it was going to happen or it was imminent. I think that, when you've covered for 19 years and teams aren't doing well, you always realize that it's a possibility. But in the past, with whether it be Ken Hitchcock, Mike Yeo, other coaches, I think there was like this 3-week, 4-week period where it was like, okay, it's coming. Like something could happen. I remember when Mike Yeo started the Stanley Cup year, even before the season started, there were kind of rumblings like, this is a good team, and if this doesn't get started well, something could happen. So It always feels like there's like a bug planted in terms of that. With this, we know that the team was up and down, right? We talked about all the inconsistencies, wins over Vegas, Colorado, losses to San Jose, Chicago, Columbus. Doug Armstrong, after a Chicago loss or a Columbus loss, doesn't pick up the phone and call me and say, that was ugly and I'm really frustrated. Nothing like that. Nothing. That's not the relationship. But knowing Doug Armstrong, I got to believe and feel that he is not happy and he's frustrated. He's going to try to continue to get to the bottom of it. But did I think he was going to fire Craig Berube after the game the other night? No. I was on the elevator with Doug after the game. That happens about 90% of the time. The reporters are on the elevator with Doug and his management staff. They're going downstairs. And, you could see the frustration on his face. But in terms of him walking the 200 feet down to the office area to walk into Craig Berube's office and pull the rug, I just didn't see that coming that night.
All right, so the way that I have been trying to break this down over the course of the last 24 hours is sort of three different ways, three different points of view that I have seen over the course of the last 24 hours. One, all right, and we're going to go through these, all right, but I just want to throw these out there first. One, hey, Coach Berube, you're not winning. When you don't win in the NHL, you get fired. That seems to be the minority opinion amongst Blues fans, but still out there. Two, Doug Armstrong, they want his head, and they want it now. They think that this is his roster, that Craig Berube is the fall guy. Then there is the other side that are on top of these players, all right? And I got to tell you, man, I think I go somewhere in the middle right now between Doug Armstrong and the players. Now, listen, I understand, and I think that both of these things can be true, that Doug Armstrong is one of the greatest general managers in the history of hockey, one of the best general managers in the league right now, but he has made some mistakes that have put this team in a bad spot. And I think it started with not signing Petro. I think that is when the snowball started, at least in my opinion. But man, I'm telling you where I'm most pissed off about. It's these freaking players. Because to me, this is 150 freaking percent on them. You watch those games. I watch those games. We had this conversation, JR, last week about how we can see when these dudes aren't locked in. It's easy to tell. And now it seems like if they get down a goal or even two, forget it. There's no pushback. Man, I don't know who on the, besides Braden Shin, I know there's more, but I don't know who on this team hates losing. I want more guys on my team that hate freaking losing, and I don't know that the Blues have those guys.
No, you definitely.
And I'm sorry to go on that diatribe there, JR.
That's the Donny I love.
But dude, it's just it breaks down to I don't completely understand this.
Yeah, no, so let me take to what you said and then put it in my perspective.
Break it down, yeah.
Is that, let's just say it's 33% management Armstrong, 33% the coaching, and 33% the players. And then I just want to tell you what I feel about each category there. I feel like let's start with Doug Armstrong. I agree with you, and I wrote it at The Athletic, that I do think that this kind of started with Alex Pietrangelo not bringing him back, and we're not here to break all that down or take sides or anything like that. Let's just say that when it didn't happen, then you go and sign Torrey Krug. Nobody's trying to say that he's going to fill Alex Pietrangelo's spot, but he's not the type of guy, when you put that together with promoting Colton Parayko to the number one, it didn't work like Alex Pietrangelo staying here would have. Then, okay, well, now we got to bring in somebody else. We bring in a Marco Scandella. Wow, he looks pretty good with Parayko. Let's sign him to a multi-4-year deal and see how that works. It didn't work as well. Now you're signing Nick Leddy. So now you're trying to build the roster back up when you had the guy here. Mm-hmm. And so whatever happened there with the Pietrangelo thing, we can save that for another day. I believe that was kind of the snowball. So now the team isn't as good. Now you make a decision not to bring in David Perron back. You have to trade Ryan O'Reilly, I think, to get that first-round draft pick, because now you're getting ready to go into a retool. So the bottom line here is the team just isn't as good as it was. So now when you talk about Craig Berube's 33%, what was he doing his job? What was he not doing right? Why did it fall off? Things like that. Well, number one, he's not coaching as competitive as a team that he was before. And he just doesn't have as many good players as he did. You can look at any team, football, look at any team. If you don't have the players, you're not going to be as successful as a coach. You can wake up every day and try your hardest. Doug Armstrong said yesterday, something that sticks out. He said, Craig Berube, when I was in Europe for 2 weeks recently, we'd talk every day. He'd give me the message. I love the message. I love what he was going to tell him. I love what we were doing each day. He said, and then I'd turn on the TV at 3 a.m. because, again, he's in Europe. And he said, I just didn't see it on the ice. So to me, that means the message is good. Berube's got good intentions. He's trying to coach his bag off, right, to get these guys to play better hockey, but it's not happening. So now we get to the 33% with the players. I think that you have to hold them accountable, whatever their talent level is, whatever it is. If a scale is 10 and this team's a 3 or a 5 or a 7, whatever it is, you have to hold them accountable. So, yes, they do deserve what you're saying, the criticism for not showing it every night, not coming back from 1-goal deficits, so on and so forth. But the one thing I want to keep in perspective is this isn't as good of a team as they had. So can they play better? For sure. Are they going to be a playoff team? We don't know that. We didn't know that at the beginning of the season. The bottom line is, to wrap all that up, is that Doug Armstrong saw a situation, whether it be the players, whether it be they weren't getting the proper coaching, whatever it was, a change had to be made, and that's what led to this quick decision.
It is just, even as you're saying things, and even as other people bring up, it's not as good of a team, simply. It's just not as good of a team. I mean, that in and of itself tells you a lot of things in which that you need. But it's just also, too, I mean, I think that there are times, though, that we've seen it, that there is just and I don't know who the players are, but there are just certain dudes on this team that I think that their max effort is what it is, and that's all they're going to give.
And I agree with you, and that's the one thing that I want to keep in context here, is because maybe that max effort is who they are. Yeah. And so when I talk about, look at Kasperi Kapanen, pretty good player when he starts out in Toronto. He leaves there, he goes to Pittsburgh. He's overpaid in Pittsburgh, so they put him on waivers. And the Blues, knowing that they're going to be in sort of a retool and they're going to need guys on the cheap a little bit. Well, here's a top 9 forward at 3-point whatever, and we can bring him in, right? Oh, Jacob Vrana, Detroit, you're going to pay 50% of his salary. Oh, we're kind of going through a retool. We could use a guy with a little high ceiling. They know he has issues. They know there's a situation why Detroit wants to get rid. So you bring that guy in too. Kevin Hayes, same situation. You bring him in from Philadelphia where he needed a change of scenery. And so my point is, as a Blues fan, you turn on the TV every night for 10, 20, 50 years, and you expect them to be good. And for the past 10-plus years, including the Stanley Cup, they're great, right? Really good team. But that's who you're comparing it. That's who you want him to be. That's where your fandom is. And, you're familiar. You're aware that some of these guys aren't the best players in the league. But then when they come out and it's up and down and no power play and this and that, well, guess what? This is what Doug Armstrong did. This is the team that he brought in to help the Blues get through this retool to try to stay competitive, but yet look to the future as well. So the thing is, we can talk about max effort. We can talk about guys trying. There's a reason these guys are on this roster is because they were available.
Yep. Yeah, you're right.
If they were great players, they'd be somewhere else.
That is where the fan part of me supersedes the intelligent part of me.
No,
you know what I mean?
Well,
not the intelligent part of me, but man, you just want it so bad, and you just see, well, if X, Y, or Z happens, we're right here, we're right there. All right, so not only, and I did not get clarification on this, but I can just only assume. So not only was Berube let go, but were the assistants let go as well?
No, just Berube. They kept Steve Ott, Mike Weber. I think this is a situation where they just wanted to make kind of the definitive change there, and then everything else is going to be evaluated. So Drew Bannister will be. I think he arrived in St. Louis yesterday, Wednesday. He'll be down at the morning skate today. I'm heading down there. He'll be the head coach behind the bench tonight. I'm sure we'll get into him during the podcast at some point. But Drew Bannister, the Springfield coach, he'll take over, and I know that some people were probably upset that the rest of the staff wasn't let go with Berube because it hasn't been a good year in terms of power play, Steve Ott, so on and so forth. But I think it's a situation where Doug Armstrong wants to hang on to them for now and then just evaluate as we go along here.
Right, and then if they do hire out, then that person will have the ability to put their staff together,
exactly.
that sort of thing. So, like you said, so tell us about Drew Bannister. Tell us about this guy. I know that he's been in Springfield a couple of years. I mean, Jeremy, Is this a job? I mean, is he a legitimate contender for this gig, do you think, or is he just kind of the holder?
So I think Doug Armstrong made it pretty clear yesterday. He said that he's the interim. That's what they gave it to him as. They said, do you want the job? Do you want to come up here and do this? And Drew Bannister said, I've been waiting my whole life for this. Of course I do.
Yes.
So he's going to take over. It is going to be on an interim basis. Is he a candidate? We asked Doug that specifically. He said yes, because it's wide open. It's wide open search. He could be a guy. Now, I remember going back to when Craig Berube was promoted to interim back in 2018-19. I don't think anybody gave him a snowball's shot in hell that he was going to be the head coach. But week after week, you saw what he could do, and the team kept winning. So I think he obviously made himself the guy, right? Can Drew Bannister do that? Perhaps. I think it was a little bit easier for Berube to do it because the talent was already there on that team. I mean, we're talking Pietrangelo and Bouwmeester, Parayko, Perron, O'Reilly, all those guys. So that team was set. This team's not like that. So Drew Bannister comes in. He doesn't have a Ferrari, right? What do I drive? A Ford 150? So he's got a Ford 150. So that's what he's got to deal with right now. In the meantime, Doug's going to start this search, and, I've been to 4 press conferences now with Doug where he talks about the search, and it's going to be wide-ranging, So I'm sure he's got a short list of candidates that he's got in mind. The thing here, Donnie, is the trend – well, I shouldn't say trend because it seems like it's been happening forever, but what teams have been doing the past couple years is hiring that recycled guy that's been with 4 teams.
Right.
You talk about – look at Laviolette. He goes to New York, and he's changed that entire culture. It's like his 5th team. But that seems to be working right now. So is that the route that Doug goes? I'll say this. Whoever comes in is going to have a challenge because, as you know, this roster's got a ton of 30-year-old guys, long-term contracts, no trade clauses, and the team wants to win now, right? They want to be competitive. But at the same time, they need somebody who can groom and kind of communicate with these young players that are coming in. And that's a challenge. Usually when you come in as a coach, it's either a win-now mode or it's a look to the future. And as you know, the Blues are right there in the middle.
So the first person that I thought of as far as the recycled thing goes was Bruce Boudreau.
Right.
And I just like as you're talking about this, I'm thinking to myself, the person that takes this gig, they have got a freaking challenge in front of him. What is this coach need? I mean, like you said, this coach is going to need to be able to go through these 30-year-old guys on these contracts, but still be able to bring up younger players. One of the things that I loved about Coach Berube is that I thought that he did really well in bringing up younger players. So that's a little bit concerning to me too.
See, now that's a great point. And that's why I think the firing of Berube was surprising to me because you're in this retool, and to me, Berube's kind of that perfect guy for that role because he's in kind of the win. Okay, we got the veterans, we got the Falks, the Krugs, the Shens, the Sods, these guys. Okay, I've coached them. I can work with these guys, but also, the Robert Thomases, Kyrus, I can push those guys. You want to bring me some more young guys? I've shown as a minor league coach, Doug Armstrong has said himself that Craig Berube is great at grooming young players. So to me, he fit that whole role perfectly. In terms of the Bruce Boudreaux and the Gerard Gallants who are out there, those guys are great coaches, and like I said a minute ago, that seems to be who teams have been turning to the past couple of years. But I don't see that as a fit here in St. Louis because let's just look at Boudreaux for a minute. Can he come in and give you a boost? Yeah. Could he come in today and the Blues win 6 and get hot and maybe make the playoffs? Yeah. But the thing is, he's older, and he's going to be judged by winning now. Is he going to put any emphasis, or is he going to want to put any emphasis on grooming these young players and making them better for 6 years? He's not going to be here in 6 years.
Right.
So that's why Doug Armstrong has to go out and find this guy who's probably a little bit younger, probably has worked in the American Hockey League recently and dealt with these guys and kind of has a pulse for today's athlete. I think that's who he's going to be looking for.
Because I got to tell you, man, if it's going to be one of these Gerard Gallant, Bruce Boudreaux types, then I feel like in 2 seasons, 3 seasons, we're going to be here all over again.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a long-term solution, and I think that's what you're saying.
Yeah, and I don't think so either. Look, when they brought in Andy Murray, you needed a different change of pace type coach, a guy that's going to, I don't say wear on guys, but it's going to get after them, right? And that's only going to last a couple years. I don't see any sense in bringing in a guy like that knowing that you're probably going to move him out in a couple years. I mean, that's not where the Blues are at right now.
No, they are going to need somebody that can grow with these guys too, right? So this is going to take some kind of digging for Doug Armstrong. And I wonder, man, because he's had to have been thinking about this for a while, so there's probably at least a little list already started. And
yeah, I think Doug said it one time. The list doesn't just get drawn up once you start losing and you fire somebody. The list is drawn up. You could be 22-1 and you still got that list
of hey, this is somebody that we could call if something goes sideways.
Yeah, but I think that let's get past the Berube firing and just that happened, move on.
Right.
If you look forward, I think it's a fairly good situation to be in now in terms of, now you're at that stage where you're looking for a coach and you're going to hire one because, let Bannister roll with it. Let him see what happens the rest of this year. If you make the playoffs, great, but I don't think that's what anybody like Doug Armstrong, his staff, are judging this season on. And, if it takes a month to find this guy, if in 2 months you see that Bannister is the guy, if it takes Bannister finishing out the year and then you go get that guy in the offseason because that's when more good coaches are available. I think Doug Armstrong, I don't want to say good situation, but I think that the way it's laid out in front of him, it's not a bad place to be in terms of finding a coach.
And that makes a lot of sense too. And also too, I don't know what franchise that we just gifted with a badass head coach, but somebody needs to be sending us a thank you card once he gets fired or hired before the beginning of next season.
Yeah,
because somebody's going to scoop up Berube. He'll take the rest of this year, right, and he'll get a gig before the start of next year if he wants it, right?
Yeah, if he wants it. Yeah, I think that I wouldn't be surprised if some teams have already reached out in light of this. And he does have a contract with the Blues that runs through 24-25, so they'll have to go through kind of all that. But I think that if he wants it, he could probably be coaching this year, and hopefully I'll get a chance to talk with him here in the near future and see what his plans are. But if not, next year for sure.
How does that work? So, does that mean that the Blues would stop paying the contract, or how would that happen?
Yeah, so it's a deal where the Blues, first of all, would have to be contacted by that team, grant permission to talk to Berube.
Which they will.
Work something out. And then typically, if I'm not mistaken, I've only dealt with this a couple times, I think it's a situation where, let's say Team X comes in, says we're going to give Berube a 3-year deal. Here's what we're gonna pay him. I think the money that the Blues owe him would likely come down from what they still owe him based on that agreement with the new team that takes him.
What do you think the locker room is like? What do you think the locker room has been like since it happened? Are the players affected by when this stuff happens? Are we at a stage in sports and the way that this works that they're like, yep, that's part of the business. We'll see the next guy when he gets here.
With the locker room, it's a situation I think we've played out several times, when coaches get fired. You hear a lot of the same cliches, Donnie, where we cost a good guy his job, and we're sorry for it. I think that Jordan Binnington probably had the best words yesterday. He came out and said that we got to show some pride in wearing this blue note. Whoever the coach is, I think he's a guy who holds himself accountable and does a pretty good job of holding others accountable too. So I think that the locker room right now is a place where they realize that they didn't play as good as they could have, and perhaps if they did, then he'd still be here. I think the thing is, and I really do believe this, if the Blues had beaten a couple good teams, the Colorados, right, and Vegas's, and taken care of business against those other teams, maybe you lose some games to the middle teams, but don't lose those games to the bottom feeders. I think Berube would still be here. I think that's been the biggest craw for Doug Armstrong is the ups and downs, peaks and valleys. He can't deal with that, and nor should he, right?
Yeah.
You just can't have that. Every time you come to the rink, it's so much emotion because you don't know which team you're going to see, and if you get a lead on a team or you're trying to come, you just don't know what you're going to get. And so I think that that's what Doug Armstrong saw in Craig Berube in terms of how he was coaching the team and what he was getting out of the team. So, we'll see when Drew Bannister comes in. Do they still have these types of pendulum swings up and down? I don't know. It seems like that's the makeup of this team, this group, but they're going to have to show otherwise.
It was kind of crazy, and I know I'm not the first one to say it, but that giveaway at the end of that game by Kyrou that led to the empty netter or whatever, it was just like, man, that a listener even said it on my Twitter, that encapsulated so much in those few seconds. And it's just such a bummer, man, because I understand people being upset at different players and certain players. I think almost the entire team I'm friggin' breathing fire on right now. But a guy like Jordan Kyrou or anybody that has that much talent that you consistently and continually have to go, I wonder if this guy's plugged in this game or not. It's so maddening. I'm not saying that they should trade him. I know he's a young guy. I'm not saying any of those things. I'm just saying that it's frustrating to me that you don't see a guy like Jordan Kyrou doing everything in his power to freaking keep that goddamn puck in the zone. It drives me freaking bonkers, man. So as much as I try to stick up for the guy, I see why people get pissed off.
Yeah, and I'm with you there. As I preface this sometimes by saying I'm a reporter. You stay objective. A lot of times you have to give opinion, but I like the talent that Jordan Kyrou has, and I really do think that he, for the first 20 games or so, had taken some strides. I know that the offense hasn't been there, but I think he's done some other things that people were getting on him about, right? So he's trying to fix those things. He does. Okay, the goals aren't coming in. He's still third in the league in 5-on-5 attempts, so the attempts were there. You think as a reporter, okay, yeah, you got to be critical, but at the same time, it's going to come around. And I remember I used to be critical of Tarasenko. Hey, he hasn't scored in 6 games, and then he put a hat trick in. It's
sure.
Okay, shut up, Jeremy, type thing. But I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm same thing watching the game the other night. So we're in the press box, and you're up in the clouds, right? And so I'm looking down, 300 feet down at that play. They're going on the power play. Is the power play really going to score here and tie the game? And is this going to be a situation where the power play clicks? And then you see that thing happen with Kyrou on the wall, and did I just watch that? Did he not protect did he not? Oh my goodness. Holy smokes. And so, yeah, you're right. The irony in Craig Berube trying to turn Jordan Kyrou into a better player, and that winds up being the last play in Craig Berube's coaching career here in St. Louis.
Jeremy, I don't love that. This all sits very wrong for me. And as much as I know that Doug Armstrong has his responsibility here, and I do believe that he deserves to wear some of this, dude, this particular team has sort of grown my ear a little bit. I just don't listen. I'm not saying that this should be a Stanley Cup contender. I'm not saying that they should be first in the Central, but that game against Columbus, it looked like they didn't give two rats' asses if they won or lost. And dude, I understand you have off nights. I understand. But, man, we see these off nights all the time. And when we see these off nights on our side of things, it looks like you don't care.
Yeah,
and I'm not saying that you don't. I know that you do and you have pride. But you know what? Then let's friggin' see it. How about when somebody runs over your goalie, you get pissed off about it and mess up somebody's face?
Yeah.
I would love to see it once, man. And it seems like it's only, and Oscar Sundqvist will go, Jake Neighbors will go. I get it. But, dude, Schinner is the the only guy that's fighting when he breaks his freaking hand and is out for a freaking month because of this. I'm going to lose my mind.
No.
I just dude, I don't understand. These players have a coach that literally, legitimately says, hey, here's what you're doing right. Here's what you're doing wrong. Here's what I need to see to get you on the ice more. I don't understand what more you could possibly want as far as communication goes. Now, I know I'm not in the room. I don't know. Maybe Berube's not as great of a guy as I have him to be, but this to me seems like a team with at least a handful of dudes that don't truly give a rat's ass. And you know what? I don't like it because I feel like I'm spending time to watch a team that doesn't particularly care some nights if they win or lose.
Yeah, Doug Armstrong touched on that yesterday. Oh, first of all, I don't need to preface it again about being a reporter and being objective, but I grew up in St. Louis. I'm a lifelong St. Louis and 48 years old.
And I'm sorry that I'm yelling at you,
No,
Jeremy.
I love it. I've lived in a 20-mile radius my entire life. I've moved a couple times. I've never been outside 20 miles, of a certain area. So, I grew up with Blues posters in my room. I never knew that I would cover the Blues one day. So the reason I'm telling you this, Donnie, is, I grew up watching those teams and those players that you're talking about. And as a Blues fan growing up, that's all you wanted was the effort. I think if you go back to, I want to say 2006-ish, when Dave Checkett's ownership group came in, they put out a survey, a questionnaire that they sent out, I think, to season ticket holders. And they put a list of options of what do you want to see with your team. I'll never forget this. And Mike McCarthy with that group, with Dave Checkett's group, he came up to me and he said, Jeremy, we put out this questionnaire, and it says, what are your priorities? Do you want to see a team that wins? Do you want to see a team that wears it on their sleeve and plays hard? And that's what won. Winning wasn't the number one thing on the list. It was, I want to see it every night. I want to go home knowing that this team tried their hardest. And he couldn't believe it at the time because he was coming from New York, and that's all it is win, right?
Right.
So he knew St. Louis was different at the time. Think about it. If you put together, ask all your Blues fans, buddies, put together a list of your top favorite players. Of course, Brett Hull's going to be on that list, but who else is going to be on that list? It's going to be Sutter. It's going to be Kelly Chase. It's going to be Tony Twist. It's going to be some of these other guys that just gave it, every night, or at least played that physical style. So I think that when you look at this club and you look at other clubs that haven't brought it, it's like, okay, I don't need you to win the Central Division. Yeah. I just want to turn off the TV and go to bed knowing you lost 4-3, but you gave it everything you had. But to me, Donnie, it's so tough to analyze. Where is that line? Where is that line between this team is not good enough, this team is made up of players that aren't capable of giving it their all every night?
Yeah.
And you can criticize them either way. It doesn't matter. But are you criticizing somebody and a group of players who aren't capable of it?
Who are not put in an ideal position to do it the right way.
Yeah, they're Doug Armstrong puts this roster together the best he can. Okay, this guy's he's on waivers. We'll give this guy a second chance. He's a reclamation. You bring it in, and then it just doesn't click, and it doesn't come together on the ice. And then on TV, you're watching it. It's like, looks like these guys aren't even trying. Well, yeah, because you took a piece from this, a piece from that, and it didn't work. So again, it doesn't matter. They're in the NHL. They need to play hard. I'm not trying to take these guys off the hook.
I know what you're saying.
I just think you have to analyze, why is it not happening?
No, you're correct. And that's why when I start to get too fired up about the players, then I start to come back over to the Armstrong side of things. But I am just I am just an unhappy Blues fan at this particular stage of the game. I know that we have I know that the future is bright. And so that I don't want to lose sight of. It's just disappointing when a guy like Craig Berube has to take one for this team.
Yeah.
And I think that is what is so bothersome to me the most. So, do you see Bannister doing anything crazy with the lines tonight or anything like that?
I'm as interested as you are. I'm going to head down there and see. I can't imagine. I could be wrong. I can't imagine they're changing up a ton. The other thing I thought about, you drive down the road thinking about these things is, you put yourself in Drew Bannister's shoes. You want to come in and you want to be hard because Doug said there's got to be accountability. But I think you also want to come in with hey, buddy, how's it going? Hey, how can we make you better? Do you think he wants to go up to Jordan Kyrou yesterday or today and cold shoulder, stern look, hey, we... no, it's going to be a thing where it's not coddling, but it's got to be somewhere in between. I'm here to make you better.
Yeah.
You let me know how I can make you better, and let's go.
Boy, Jeremy, I don't like this. I didn't think that we were going to be here. I wasn't prepared for this to happen. I went to bed pretty much right after the game on Tuesday. And so I woke up from my old man pee at like 2 a.m. and I saw like 5 text messages from people. And I was like, are you friggin' kidding me? I don't remember the last time something in St. Louis sports kind of caught me off guard like this as much as this caught me off guard. I just did not see it coming.
First of all, before I respond to that, so your morning pee is at 2:30?
Well, I mean, that's the middle of the night.
Right, middle of the night.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, mine's like at 5:30. I don't even have to look at the clock. Like, I literally get out of bed. Okay, I got to go to the bathroom. I walk in the bathroom, and then, shoot, let me see how close to 5:30 it is. Oh, it's 5:29.
And then you don't go back to sleep? Yeah, that's always awesome, too.
It's dead on. Yeah, and no, we were, probably should have said this back at the start, but so I was in the press box that night after the game, and my story, because you're unaware that they're getting ready to fire the coach, right? My story was going to be, hey, if the Blues are considering firing Craig Berube, here's the questions that I would be asking myself. And I had a list of questions, and I was answering them myself. And that's the story that I would have published about the situation because, you felt like with Darren Drager's report that, hey, Blues ownership / management frustrated, if things don't change, there could be a good coach walking out the door. But I felt, and I still felt like that situation is, if things don't change, that's that window I was telling you about earlier.
Yep.
2 weeks, 3 weeks. Okay, It could happen, but it's not going to happen tonight, right? So, once that news, we're in the press box at 11:30 at night, and you get that news, so you scrap your other story. Now you're writing Berube fired story. Get home about 3 o'clock in the morning, and 2.5 hours later, I was up peeing, right?
That's insane. So wait, real quick, how do you find out in the press box that it happened?
Yeah, we get a message from the press release.
Okay, so that's it. So the same press release I get in my email is what lets you know?
Yeah, same thing. And you can. We always talk about covering the team. You're around them all the time. You're an insider, quote unquote. You want to do the best job you can, but I think people would be a little bit surprised in that stuff is kept so quietly. I mean, especially with a Doug Armstrong, who's old school. He grew up with the Bobby Clarks and the Bob Gainies that were running the show, and everything is close to the vest. He has told me multiple times that inner circle, is so tight. And, so to answer your question, you follow a team all the time. You do the hits on 101 ESPN. We do the podcast here. Would you like it if 3 hours before somebody calls you and says, hey, the Blues are going to fire their coach tonight. Look out for it. Yeah. And that does happen sometimes. But I think in this particular situation and a few others, you find out when the rest of the people find out. Because, I don't know, Doug Armstrong talked about it a little bit yesterday, Donnie. I don't know that he's driving to the rink yesterday thinking tonight's going to be the night. Yeah. He had talked about the frustration. I think we was probably going to happen soon based on his comments yesterday. But there's not a whole lot of people that know that he's going to pull the trigger like that.
Man, oh man, this is something else. Jeremy, your perspective is so freaking amazing.
No,
Thank you so much, man.
Here.
I appreciate it. And unfortunately, we had our good homie, Alex Ferrario, was going to join us today, but he had a sickness in the Ferrario household. But man, if you want to keep up to date on everything that is going on with this Blues team, with the coaches search, with everything, make sure that you are subscribing to The Athletic and reading our friend Jeremy Rutherford and listening to our other friend, Alex Ferrario on 101 ESPN, because there is, there's a lot going on right now. This is it's a duh thing to say, but this is a critical and crucial hire for this team right now. This head coach going into this next window of whatever it is. Doug's got to get it right.
He has to, and that's a great point to wrap up here. Is this is his 5th coach that he'll be hiring. First of all, you don't see too many GMs that are in place for as long as he has been, 13 years, even longer if you count the GM in waiting period. So when you think about hiring 5 head coaches, you got to consider that he's been around for a long time, right? But that said, I don't know that he gets another one, right? So I think that he's got to get this right, which you say going into every hire, but this one especially. We talked about the challenges of this hire, a guy who can win now but also look to the future. And, if we're talking about Doug hires a guy in 2 months and this team ends the season on a sour note and gets off to a bad start, next year and Kairu's not progressing, if we get into that type of situation, I don't know that Doug is going to be allowed to hire another coach.
Yeah. That was going to be a question that I had too, is at what point is Doug Armstrong on the hot seat? Is that hot seat getting hot right now? Has it already been hot?
I don't consider it hot for this reason, that I know for a fact in many, many conversations with Tom Stillman, the chairman of the Blues, that he and Doug are tight, that he trusts in Army, like fans always say, trust in Army. And when I say this, I understand why he says this. Look at all the success that Doug's had in terms of, one Stanley Cup in 10 plus years. It's a hard thing to do, but they did it. And number two, look at all the, stringing together the years of making the playoffs. And so I think he feels strongly that Doug is the right guy for this job, and I don't see that changing. And so, yes, he has to get this right, but I think that even Tom would have to get to a point in a year or two, 2.5, if it doesn't work out with whoever the next coach is, that, okay, perhaps it's time to move on. But, Donnie, yesterday Doug was asked, do you feel that your job is safe? And he said, am I concerned about it? No. He has a good relationship, but he said that until they tell me to go away, I'm going to keep working hard. So that's always been his attitude.
Wow. For Jeremy Rutherford, Alex Ferrario, Jamie Rivers, and our homeboy Jeff Burton, it is the Last Minute Blues podcast. As always, thank you very much for listening, and let's go Blues.
The Last Minute Blues Podcast. Hear more at 1057thepoint.com.